I only have $3. The words came out as a whisper, but in the hushed elegance of the Sterling Room on New Year's Eve, they might as well have been shouted through a megaphone. Emma Harper watched her date. Mark's face transformed from mildly interested to absolutely horrified in the span of a single heartbeat. "I'm sorry," what Mark said, his voice rising just enough that the couple at the next table paused mid-con conversation to look. Emma's hands trembled as she pulled the crumpled bills from her coat pocket and laid them on the pristine white tablecloth. 3 $1 bills and some change. $3.47 to be exact. The emergency cash her mother had taught her to always carry. Enough for a cab ride home if she needed it. Not nearly enough for a New Year's Eve dinner at one of city's most expensive restaurants. "My wallet was stolen this morning," Emma explained, her voice shaking despite her best efforts to stay calm on the subway. "I didn't realize until just now when I reached for my credit card. This is all I have left." Mark leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting from shock to something far worse. Disgust mixed with disbelief, like he was looking at something distasteful he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. "So, let me get this straight," he said slowly, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You came to a New Year's Eve date. A restaurant I specifically chose because it's one of the nicest in the city with $3 in your pocket. It was stolen," Emma repeated, feeling her face burn with humiliation. "I filed a police report this morning. I've already canned all my cards. I thought I had my wallet in my purse, but someone must have pickpocketed me at the station. I haven't needed it until now because I took the subway here. I didn't save it," Mark interrupted, holding up his hand. "Do you have any idea how many women try this? The convenient lost wallet on an expensive date? It's the oldest trick in the book." Emma felt like she'd been slapped. "I'm not trying anything. My wallet was genuinely stolen. I can show you the police report number." "I can." "I don't care about your story," Mark said flatly, standing up and pulling his coat from the back of his chair. "I'm not paying for someone who shows up to a date expecting me to cover everything because they conveniently can't pay. That's not what's happening." Emma's voice cracked with frustration and mounting panic. "I had no way of knowing this would happen. I'm not expecting you to pay for me. I just need to figure out." "Good luck with that." Mark cut her off. He pulled out his wallet, tossed 3 20s on the table with theatrical precision, and looked at Emma with cold contempt. "That covers my meal and tip. You can explain your $3 situation to the waiter. I'm done here." And then he was gone, just walked away, weaving through tables full of happy couples celebrating the new year, past the champagne tower near the entrance, out into the cold December night without once looking back. Emma sat frozen in her chair, acutely aware that every person within earshot had just witnessed her complete humiliation. The elderly couple by the window were whispering behind their wine glasses. The businessmen at the bar had stopped their conversation to watch the drama unfold. A family with young children 2 tables away were trying not to stare, but failing spectacularly. The waiter approached her table with careful steps, clearly unsure how to handle the situation. Emma pressed her napkin to her eyes, trying desperately not to cry in public. Not here, not on New Year's Eve, not in front of all these people who just watched her get abandoned because she couldn't pay for dinner. "Miss," the waiter said gently, "is everything all right?" Emma lowered the napkin. Her mascara probably ruined. Her dignity definitely shattered. "I need to explain something. My wallet was stolen, and I only have $3, and I know that doesn't cover my meal. But if I could just... Excuse me." A male voice interrupted from nearby, gentle but firm. Emma looked up through her tears to see a man standing beside her table. He was tall, handsome in an understated way, with dark hair and kind eyes. He wore a dark blue shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and behind him stood 3 identical little blonde girls in red dresses, all staring at Emma with matching expressions of concern. "I'm very sorry to interrupt," the man said, and Emma could hear genuine apology in his voice. But my daughters and I couldn't help but overhear what happened, and they're quite insistent that you need help." The smallest of the three girls stepped forward without hesitation. "That man was really mean to you," she said with the blunt honesty only a 6-year-old could manage. "We heard him yelling. He shouldn't have left you all alone," the second girl added, her small face creased with worry, especially on New Year's Eve. The third finished like abandoning someone on this particular night was the worst possible offense. Emma felt fresh tears spill over as she stared at these three little strangers who decided her problem was their problem. She started, but her voice failed her completely. The man looked at the waiter. "Please add her bill to mine," he said simply. Then he turned to Emma with a kind smile that made her chest ache. "And if you're willing, my daughters would very much like you to join us for the rest of dinner, so you don't have to spend New Year's Eve alone." Emma opened her mouth to refuse, to say she couldn't possibly accept such kindness from strangers, to maintain whatever dignity she had left. But before she could speak, the first little girl had already climbed into the empty chair beside her. "I'm Lily," she announced, reaching out to pat Emma's hand with small fingers. "And you don't have to be sad anymore. Okay, we're here now." Her sister sat down on Emma's other side. "I'm Ava, and Lily's right. You're not alone anymore." The third girl remained standing, her hand finding Emma's. "I'm Sophie, and we're very good at making sad people feel better. Daddy says it's our superpower." Emma looked at these three little girls with their fierce compassion and their absolute certainty that helping a crying stranger was the right thing to do. She looked at their father, who was offering kindness without expectation or judgment, and she felt something inside her chest crack wide open. "Thank you," she whispered, the words barely making it past the lump in her throat. "Thank you so much." The man smiled and extended his hand. "I'm James Martinez." "And you are Emma," she managed. "Emma Harper." "Well, Emma Harper," James said warmly. "It's very nice to meet you. And I'm very sorry your evening started so badly. But if my daughters have anything to say about it, it's about to get much better." Lily squeezed Emma's hand. "Do you like dessert? Because Daddy promised we could have dessert, and you should definitely have dessert, too, because dessert makes everything better." And somehow, impossibly, Emma found herself laughing through her tears. "Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. 2 years and 4 months earlier, Emma Harper had been sitting in a different restaurant with a different man, having a conversation that would define the next chapter of her life. His name was David. They'd been dating for 8 months, living together for 3, talking about marriage like it was an inevitable next step rather than a carefully considered decision. "I got the job," David had said, sliding the offer letter across the table with barely contained excitement. "Senior Vice President, Seattle office, 6-figure salary, company car, the whole package." Emma had felt her stomach drop even as she'd forced a smile. "That's amazing. Congratulations. It is amazing," David had agreed, reaching for her hand. "And the best part, they said there's a position in their marketing department that would be perfect for you. We could both start fresh in Seattle. New city, new adventures, new life together. I have a job here," Emma had said carefully. "A good job. I just made assistant principal. It's what I've been working toward for 6 years. Assistant principal at a public elementary school," David had said. And there had been something dismissive in his tone that made Emma's spine stiffen. "Emma, you're talented. You could be doing so much more. This marketing position pays almost twice what you're making now. I don't want to work in marketing. I want to work with kids. I want to teach." David had squeezed her hand, patronizing in a way that made her want to pull away. "I know you love teaching, but think about our future. Think about the life we could build in Seattle. A real house. Not this cramped apartment. Financial security. room to grow a family. "I'm not moving to Seattle," Emma had said quietly. David had gone very still. "What, I'm not moving to Seattle. This is my home. My career is here. My students need me. I've worked too hard to get where I am to just walk away because you got a job offer. So, you expect me to turn down the opportunity of a lifetime because you want to stay here and make poverty wages teaching other people's kids?" The words had hung between them like poison. "Other people's kids," Emma had repeated slowly. "You know what I mean. It's a noble profession." "Emma, but let's be realistic. You're 30 years old. If we're going to get married, have our own children, build a real life together, we need financial stability. This job gives us that. I have financial stability. I have a career I love. What I don't have is a partner who respects my choices." The fight that had followed lasted 3 hours. It ended with David packing his things and moving out that same night. "You're making a mistake," he'd said as he'd loaded the last box into his car. "You're choosing a job over us, over our future. Don't come crying to me when you're 40 and alone and realize what you gave up." Emma had stood in the doorway of their apartment, watching him drive away, and felt nothing but relief. She'd chosen herself, her career, her students, her life. For 2 years. That had been enough. She'd thrown herself into work with renewed purpose, made a difference in her students' lives, built meaningful relationships with families, created programs that helped struggling kids find their confidence. But she'd also been lonely. Achingly, desperately lonely. Dating had been a disaster. She tried apps, blind dates set up by well-meaning friends, chance meetings at coffee shops. Every single one had ended the same way. "You're a teacher. That's sweet. What do you do for real money?" "Elementary school." "Don't you want to work with older kids, ones you can actually have intellectual conversations with?" "So, you spend all day with children. No wonder you don't want kids of your own." That last one had been particularly painful because it wasn't true. Emma loved children, devoted her life to them. But after years of giving everything she had to other people's kids, the thought of coming home and giving more to her own felt exhausting rather than joyful. She'd started lying on dates, saying she was in administration, leaving out the part where she spent her days tying shoes and mediating playground disputes and teaching 6-year-olds how to read. Tonight's date with Mark had been her first attempt at honesty in months. She put in her profile. Elementary school assistant principal, passionate about education, looking for someone who values meaningful work over salary size. Market seemed perfect. A corporate consultant who claimed to value purpose-driven professionals, who'd said in his messages that he admired teachers and thought education was the most important work in society, in person. He'd spent the first 20 minutes of dinner explaining how his consulting work actually changed systems while teaching just maintained the status quo. Then her wallet had been stolen and everything had fallen apart. Now sitting at a table with a widowed father and his 3 daughters. Emma felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope that maybe not everyone saw her career as a liability. 3 years and 7 months earlier, James Martinez had been sitting in a hospital waiting room holding 3 newborn daughters and trying to understand how his wife was dead. Rachel had been healthy, 32 years old. No complications during pregnancy, except the expected challenges of carrying triplets. The doctors had said everything was fine. The delivery had been smooth. All 3 girls born healthy and screaming within 20 minutes of each other. And then Rachel had started bleeding, postpartum hemorrhage. The doctor had said the words clinical and cold. We did everything we could. Sometimes these things happen without warning. There was nothing anyone could have done differently. Rachel had died 90 minutes after giving birth to their daughters. James had become a widower and a father of 3 in the same hour. The first year had been survival. Nothing more. Nothing less. His mother had moved in immediately, taking charge with the military precision of a woman who'd raised 5 children of her own. She taught James how to feed 3 babies at once using bottle props and careful positioning. how to change diapers in assembly line fashion, how to tell the girls apart when they looked absolutely identical. Lily has a small birthmark behind her left ear. His mother had explained in those early weeks. Ava's right foot is slightly smaller than her left. Sophie sneezes exactly 3 times, never more, never less. Those small details had been James's lifeline in those first months when everything else felt like chaos. By year 2, his mother had moved back to her own home, and James had been managing alone. Sort of. He'd hired nannies, 7 of them in 18 months. They had all quit for the same reason. "I didn't sign up for triplets," one had said apologetically. "It's just too much." "They are very sweet girls," another had explained. "But I can't keep up with 3 toddlers at once. I'm sorry." He'd finally given up on nannies and cobbled together childcare through a combination of daycare, his mother's help, and his neighbor Mrs. Patterson, who'd retired from teaching and missed having children around. By year 3, James had stopped dating entirely. The few attempts he'd made had been disastrous. Women who claimed to love kids suddenly got very quiet when they realized kids meant 3 identical toddlers who came as a package deal. Women who seemed understanding about his situation eventually admitted they'd been hoping he'd get over Rachel and be emotionally available. Women who actually liked his daughters still couldn't compete with the reality that James's time, energy, and attention were split 4 ways, and there simply wasn't enough left over for a romantic relationship. So he'd stopped trying, focused entirely on being the best father he could be, on making sure his girls knew they were loved even though their mother was gone, on building a life that was full enough that he didn't feel the loneliness too keenly. Most days it worked. But on nights like tonight, New Year's Eve, sitting in a restaurant surrounded by couples, James felt the absence of Rachel like a physical ache. "Daddy, can we get dessert?" Lily had asked just before he'd noticed the crying woman 2 tables over. "Of course." "Bug," he'd said, grateful for the distraction. "What sounds good?" That's when he'd heard the man's raised voice. The cruel words watched the woman's face crumble as her date walked away. "That man is mean," Ava had whispered, her small face troubled. "Very mean," Sophie had agreed, already sliding out of her chair with the determination of someone on a mission. James had tried to stop them. "Girls, we can't just too late." They were already marching toward the crying woman's table, and James had no choice but to follow. Now, watching Emma laugh through her tears while his daughters fussed over her like she was a wounded bird they'd found, James felt something shift in his chest. Not attraction, not exactly, more like recognition. The recognition that this woman who'd been humiliated and abandoned and was still trying to hold herself together with grace was someone worth knowing. Over the next hour, Emma gradually relaxed. The girls peppered her with questions. What did she do for work? Did she have any pets? What was her favorite color? Did she like the same movies they liked? "I'm a teacher," Emma said, and James watched her brace for the inevitable dismissive response. "Assistant principal at Riverside Elementary." All 3 girls' eyes went wide. "You work at a school." Lily breathed like Emma had just announced she was our astronaut. "That's the best job," Ava declared. "Do you get to read books all day?" Sophie asked hopefully. Emma laughed, genuine and surprised. "Sometimes, mostly, I help other teachers do their jobs and make sure students are learning and happy." "That sounds really important," Lily said. "Seriously, it is important," James agreed, catching Emma's eye. "Teachers are undervalued in every possible way." Emma's smile was grateful and a little stunned, like she wasn't used to anyone defending her career choice. As dinner progressed, James learned more about her. She'd been teaching for 8 years, loved working with elementary kids because they still think learning is fun instead of a chore, had a cat named Biscuit who was objectively the world's worst cat, but also the best. "What makes him the worst?" Ava asked, fascinated. "He knocks everything off every surface. Counters, shelves, My desk. If it's not nailed down, Biscuit will push it onto the floor just to watch it fall." "Why?" Sophie asked. "Because he's a chaos agent," Emma said seriously, making all three girls giggle. When the girls excused themselves to use the bathroom together, James found himself alone with Emma for the first time. "I'm sorry again about earlier," Emma said quietly, "about interrupting your dinner, about crying all over your daughters." "Don't apologize," James said firmly. "What that man did was inexcusable. You deserve better. I barely knew him. It was a first date. I shouldn't even care. That doesn't make it hurt less." Emma looked at him, really looked at him, and James saw gratitude mixed with something more vulnerable. "Thank you for helping me," she said. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stepped in." "My daughters would have staged a revolt if I hadn't," James said with a slight smile. "They take rescuing people very seriously. They're incredible. You've raised them beautifully. I've done my best. Their mother would have done better." The words slipped out before James could stop them. Emma's expression softened. "Your wife. She died when the girls were born. Complications from delivery. They never got to know her." "I'm so sorry," Emma said, and her sympathy felt genuine rather than performative. "It's been almost 4 years. We've learned to manage. Still, that must have been incredibly hard. It is." James paused. "But we have each other. That's enough most days." The girls returned in a flurry of red dresses and excited chatter about the fancy bathroom with the movie star mirrors. As midnight approached, the restaurant's energy shifted. Servers began distributing champagne flutes. The countdown clock appeared on screens throughout the room. "We've never stayed up until midnight before," Lily whispered to Emma, eyes huge with excitement. "Never ever," Ava confirmed. "Daddy says we can watch the ball drop and everything," Sophie added. "That's a very special treat," Emma said warmly. When the countdown began, James found himself standing with his daughters and Emma, all of them watching the screens as the numbers ticked down. 10, 9, 8. The girls were bouncing with excitement. 7, 6, 5. Emma caught his eye and smiled, and James felt something warm unfold in his chest. 4, 3, 2. Happy New Year. The restaurant erupted in cheers and celebration. The girls threw their arms around each other, then around Emma, then around James, creating a tangle of family that somehow included this stranger they had adopted hours ago. Happy New Year. Daddy, they chorused. Happy New Year. Emma, Lily added, like Emma had always been part of their celebrations. Emma was crying again, but this time she was smiling. 2. Happy New Year, she whispered, as the celebration continued around them. Emma's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her expression changed. "My best friend," she explained. "She's been texting all night asking if I'm okay. I should probably call her before she sends a search party." "Of course," James said. Emma stepped away to make the call while the girls resumed their excited chatter about staying up past midnight. When she returned a few minutes later, her expression was complicated. "Everything okay?" James asked. "Yes. Sarah's relieved I'm not dead in a ditch somewhere. She's also insisting I come to her apartment right now because apparently me being alone on New Year's Eve is unacceptable. That sounds like a good friend," James said. "She is the best." Emma looked at the girls, then back at James. "Thank you again for everything, for dinner, for kindness, for letting your daughters adopt me for the evening. You made a terrible night into something beautiful." "It was our pleasure," James said, and meant it. Emma down to the girls' level. "Thank you for taking care of me tonight. You three are the kindest people I've ever met." "You're welcome," Lily said, hugging her tightly. "Will we see you again?" Ava asked hopefully. "I'd like that," Emma said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. Sophie pulled a crayon and paper from her small purse. "Write your phone number," she demanded, "so Daddy can call you." Emma laughed and wrote down her number, handing it to James. in case you ever need a cat sitter," she said with a smile. "Or just want to grab coffee sometime." "I'd like that too," James said, tucking the paper carefully into his wallet. They said their goodbyes at the restaurant entrance. Emma caught a cab to her friend's apartment. James and the girls took the subway home. "Daddy," Lily said as they rode the train through the city, "I'm glad we helped Emma tonight." "Me too. Bug, do you think she sat a lot?" Sophie asked, her voice worried. "I think she's been through some hard things," James said carefully, "like we have. But I think she's strong, and I think tonight reminded her that she's not alone." "Good," Ava said firmly. "Nobody should be alone, especially on New Year's Eve." James pulled all three girls close, feeling grateful for their enormous hearts and their unshakable conviction that helping people was always the right thing to do. That night, after the girls were asleep, James looked at the paper with Emma's number. He told himself he'd wait a few days before calling. Didn't want to seem too eager. Didn't want to complicate his carefully managed life. But the next morning, watching his daughter sleep and past their usual early wake-up time, exhausted from their late night, he found himself texting Emma. "James, good morning. Hope you're surviving New Year's Day. The girls wanted me to check that you made it home safely." The reply came quickly. "Emma made it safely. Currently suffering through brunch with my friend who won't stop asking about the handsome single dad with triplets. Your daughters are angels. Hope they're not too exhausted today. James, they're still asleep, which is a New Year's miracle. Would you like to get coffee sometime this week?" The girls were very insistent that we should make sure Emma is okay. "Emma, I'd love that. Though, I'm definitely okay. Best New Year's Eve I've had in years. Actually, James, same here." They met for coffee 3 days later. Just the two of them while James's mother watched the girls. "I almost canneled," Emma admitted as they sat down with their drinks. "Talked myself out of it 3 times. "Why?" James asked. "Because this feels too good to be true. Kind, handsome single dad who actually values teachers and has the world's sweetest daughters. There has to be a catch." James laughed. "The catch is that I'm exhausted single parent who hasn't had a full night's sleep in 4 years and whose idea of a wild Friday night is getting the girls to bed by 8 so I can watch 1 episode of a show before passing out on the couch." "That sounds perfect," Emma said. And she meant it. They talked for 3 hours about their lives, their losses, their hopes for the future. James told her about Rachel, about the guilt he still carried for being relieved sometimes that he didn't have to navigate marriage and parenting at the same time, about how lonely it was being the only parent at school events surrounded by couples. Emma told him about David, about the string of failed relationships since then, about how exhausted she was from defending her career choices to men who saw teaching as a hobby rather than a calling. "It's not about the money," she said passionately. "It's about making a difference. About seeing a kid who struggled all year finally understand something and their whole face lights up. About being the adult who believes in them when nobody else does." "You don't have to convince me," James said gently. "I already think what you do is incredible." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "Nobody's ever just accepted that before." "Then you've been dating the wrong people." They saw each other again the following weekend, this time with the girls. Emma met them at the park, came prepared with a backpack full of craft supplies and a plan to build fairy houses out of sticks and leaves. The girls were initially shy, but within 20 minutes, all 4 of them were deep in construction, debating the finer points of fairy architecture. "Fairies need windows," Lily insisted. "But not too many or they'll get cold," Ava added. "And they need gardens," Sophie said firmly, "for growing tiny vegetables." Emma caught James's eye and smiled. He was sitting on a nearby bench, watching them with an expression of such tenderness it made her chest ache. Over the next month, Emma became a regular part of their lives. She came to Sunday dinners, helped with homework when Lily struggled with reading, taught the girls how to make friendship bracelets, and told them stories about her students without using names. The girls adored her, and Emma found herself falling for all four of them. James was different from anyone she'd dated. He didn't try to impress her with expensive restaurants or grand gestures. He showed up consistently called when he said he would make time for her, even when his schedule was chaotic. And he listened. Really listened about her work frustrations and her difficult students and her hopes for programs she wanted to implement. "You should write a grand proposal," he said one evening after she'd spent 20 minutes excitedly explaining an idea for a literacy program. "I wouldn't even know where to start. I'll help you. I do grant writing for my job sometimes. We could work on it together." They did spend 2 weeks drafting a proposal that Emma submitted to 3 different foundations. When she got funding from one of them, she called James crying with joy. "You did this," she said. "You believed in me." "You did this," James corrected. "I just helped you put words to your vision." 2 months after New Year's Eve, they had their first real date, just the two of them. Dinner at a quiet restaurant. "I need to tell you something," James said as they sat down. Emma's stomach dropped. Here it comes, she thought. The catch. "I'm falling in love with you," James said quietly, "and that terrifies me because I haven't felt this way since Rachel. And I don't know if I'm ready, but I also don't want to lose you because I'm too scared to try." Emma reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm falling in love with you, too. And I'm terrified because every relationship I've had has ended with me not being enough. But you make me feel like I'm more than enough, like everything I am is exactly right." "You are exactly right," James said firmly. "So are you." They took it slowly. Didn't rush. Let the relationship develop naturally around the very real demands of James's parenting and Emma's career. Emma never pushed to move faster than James was comfortable with. James never made her feel like she was competing with Rachel's memory. For months in, the girls asked the question, "Is Emma your girlfriend, Daddy?" Lily asked one Sunday morning over pancakes. James looked at Emma, who was helping Sophie cut her pancake into exactly equal pieces. "Yes," he said. "She is good," Ava said with satisfaction. "We like her. We love her," Sophie corrected. Emma felt tears slide down her cheeks. "I love you, too," she whispered. "All of you." 6 months after New Year's Eve. Emma's lease was up. She and James had a conversation about next steps. "Move in with us," James said. "The girls already act like you live here half the time, and I want to wake up next to you every morning." "Are you sure that's a big step?" "I'm sure, but only if you are." Emma thought about it for exactly 30 seconds. I'm sure she moved in 3 weeks later, brought Biscuit to Chaos Cat, who immediately befriended the girls and knocked over every single item on James's bookshelf within the first hour. "I warned you," Emma said, trying not to laugh. "It's perfect," James said, pulling her close. "All of it." 1 year after New Year's Eve. James took Emma back to the Sterling Room. Same restaurant, different circumstances. "Why are we so dressed up?" Emma asked as they walked in, the girls holding her hands. "Because it's a special occasion," James said mysteriously. They were seated at the same table where they had first met. The girls were vibrating with barely contained excitement. "What's going on?" Emma asked, laughing at their faces. James knelt down beside her chair, pulled out a small velvet box. "Emma Harper, 1 year ago. You sat at this table with $3 and a broken heart. My daughter saw you and decided you needed help. I followed them over here, thinking we'd pay for a meal and go home. I had no idea we were meeting the person who would change our lives forever." Emma's hands flew to her mouth. "You've taught my daughters that love comes in all forms. That family isn't just blood. That it's okay to be vulnerable and ask for help. You've taught me that my heart is bigger than I thought. That I can honor Rachel's memory while building something new. That loving you doesn't mean loving her less. The girls were bouncing now, barely able to stay in their seats. Lily, Ava, and Sophie have something they want to ask you first, James said. All three girls knelt beside Emma's chair. Will you be our mom? Lily asked, her voice shaking with emotion. Not instead of our first mom, but like an extra mom. Because we love you so much, Ava added. And we want you to be ours forever. Sophie finished. Emma was crying so hard she could barely breathe. Yes, she managed. Yes, I want that more than anything. The girls threw their arms around her, all of them crying and laughing at the same time. James waited until they released her, then opened the box. Emma, will you marry me? Yes, Emma said through her tears. Yes, absolutely. Yes. The restaurant erupted in applause. The same waiter who'd served them that first night was openly crying. The manager sent over champagne as James slipped the ring on Emma's finger and pulled her into a kiss. Emma thought about how 1 year ago she'd been sitting at this table, believing her life was over. She'd been so wrong. Her life hadn't been over. It had been waiting to begin. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony, surrounded by people they loved. The girls were junior bridesmaids in matching dresses, carrying flowers with utmost seriousness. During the ceremony, Emma knelt down to their level. I promise to love you, guide you, and show up for you every single day. I promise to never try to replace your first mom, but to honor her memory while building our family together. I promise that you will always be enough, just as you are. There wasn't a dry eye in the venue. When the officiant pronounced them married, the girls cheered louder than anyone. 2 years after the wedding, Emma stood in the kitchen of their house making breakfast while organized chaos swirled around her. Biscuit knocked over my science project. Sophie wailed. He's a chaos agent, Lily reminded her. That's what he does. Can we have pancakes? Ava asked hopefully. James appeared in the doorway, his tie hanging loose, his hair still damp from the shower. I'm going to need backup on the science project situation, he said, kissing Emma's cheek. Tell Sophie we can rebuild it before school. We build it once, we can build it again faster. You're a genius. I'm a teacher. Problem solving is literally my job. After the girls left for school and James left for work, Emma sat at the kitchen table with her coffee, looking around at the life she'd built. A home filled with love and laughter and, yes, occasional chaos. 3 daughters who called her mom without hesitation. A husband who supported her dreams and made her feel valued every single day. A cat who was currently knocking her phone off the counter. Biscuit. We've talked about this, Emma said without any real anger. Her phone buzzed with a text from James. James, forgot to tell you this morning. I love you. The girls and I are the luckiest people in the world. Emma, I'm the lucky one. Thank you for seeing me when I needed to be seen. James, thank you for letting 3 nosy 6-year-olds adopt you. Emma, best decision I ever made. That evening, the whole family gathered for dinner. The girls chattered about their day. James told a funny story about a client meeting. Emma shared that one of her struggling students had finally passed their reading assessment. That's because you're the best teacher, Lily said with absolute conviction. The very best, Ava agreed. Better than any teacher in the whole world, Sophie added. Emma felt her throat tighten with emotion. I love you 3 so much. We love you too, Mom, they said in perfect unison. Later, after the girls were asleep, Emma and James sat on the back porch wrapped in blankets against the cool evening air. Do you ever think about that night? Emma asked. New Year's Eve for years ago. All the time, James admitted. I think about how close I came to stopping the girls from going to your table. How different our lives would be if I had. I think about how close I came to running out of that restaurant before you could help me. How I almost let pride keep me from accepting kindness. I'm glad you didn't. I'm glad your daughters are incapable of minding their own business." James laughed. They learned it from their mother. Rachel was the same way. Couldn't see someone struggling without trying to help. "She would have liked this," Emma said softly. "Us, the girls being happy. She would have loved you," James said with certainty. "You're exactly the kind of person she would have wanted for our daughters. For me." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder. "Sometimes I can't believe this is my life, that I get to have all of this." "Believe it," James said, pulling her close. "You deserve every bit of it." For years after that New Year's Eve, Emma stood in front of her students on the last day of school. "Miss Emma?" one of the students asked. She kept her maiden name professionally, even after marriage. "Are you sad that school is over?" "A little," Emma admitted. "I'll miss all of you, but I'm also excited for you to have a wonderful summer and come back in the fall ready for 3rd grade. Will you still be our principal?" another student asked. "I will. I'm not going anywhere," and she meant it. She'd had offers to move to administration at the district level. Better pay, more prestige. She turned them all down. This was where she belonged, with kids who needed her, in a community she'd built, doing work that mattered more than money or titles. That evening, she came home to find a house decorated with streamers and balloons. "Surprise?" the girl shouted as she walked in. "Happy last day of school, we made you a cake," Sophie announced proudly. "It might be a little lopsided," Lily admitted. "But it tastes good," Ava assured her. James appeared from the kitchen carrying the aforementioned lopsided cake, smiling at Emma with such love it made her breath catch even after all these years. "Congratulations on another successful year," he said. "You're incredible. I have an incredible support system," Emma corrected, pulling him in for a kiss while the girls made exaggerated gagging noises. "Still gross," Sophie declared. "Very gross." Ava agreed. "The grossest," Lily added, but they were all smiling. That night, after cake and celebration and putting 3 excited 10-year-olds to bed, Emma found James on the back porch again. This spot where they had important conversations and quiet moments and where James had first told her he was falling in love with her. "Happy?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. "Incredibly," Emma said. "Sometimes I think about that version of me sitting in that restaurant with $3 thinking my life was over. I wish I could tell her what was coming, that the worst night would lead to the best life." "She wouldn't have believed you," James said with a smile. "Probably not, but she would have been wrong." Emma looked up at the stars. "We were both wrong. Actually, that night we both thought we'd used up our chances at happiness, that we were too broken or too busy or too complicated for love. Turns out we were just waiting for the right people," James said. 3 nosy little girls and their patient father. One brave woman who let strangers help her." Emma smiled. "We're quite the team, the very best team." Inside the house, they heard a crash followed by 3 guilty giggles. "I'll handle it," James said with a sigh. "We'll handle it," Emma corrected, taking his hand because that's what they did. Handle things together, build a life together, chose each other every single day. And it all started with 3 daughters, 3 little girls, and the courage to accept help when she needed it most. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, please don't let it end here. Let it remind you kindness still matters, compassion still changes lives, and hope is never wasted. Subscribe and be part of our Heart Echo Stories family, where every voice finds its reflection and every story reminds us that light always finds its way back. And if this moment moved you, share it, because sometimes sharing hope is the kindest thing we can do.